Thank you so much for being here tonight. I want to talk to you guys about why we're here tonight. There's two reasons that come to my mind that I think that we all need to make sure that we leave here united about. First, who agrees that people are going to be on stage today that is going to be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Arizona? And the second reason I think we're here tonight is because the long road to take back our constitutional republic begins right here with a strong senator from the state of Arizona and a strong grassroots to back them up. Who agrees with that? There's a lot of fake news listening in on the live stream tonight. We didn't let too many of them in. I'm sure there's a few snuck in. But I want to let you guys to make sure that we are very clear about a few very specific things. What is happening in this country right now is not incompetence. What is happening right now with high gas prices, with the businesses that have been shuttered because of the COVID lockdowns, because of the inflation that is wreaking havoc on our entire economy right now, that is not an accident. That is the policies that are being enacted by the leadership in Washington, D.C. right now. And if you want to let the fake news know that you agree with that, please stand up. Biggest round of applause. Let's let them know that this is on purpose and we're not okay with it. All right. That's why we're here tonight. The long road to take back our republic begins tonight. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all you do. Next up, we're going to hear from some of the people that are going to help you make this happen.
There's a movement that has been taking place in your state. It's called EZAZ. And someone who I met a few years ago right here in Phoenix, Arizona, has become a part of our organization, FreedomWorks. At the very beginning, there was no question that she had the right stuff to be a part of our organization, a vital cog in what we are doing. And because of work like hers and Angela's, we now have a satellite office right here in Arizona to serve you. I want to bring up to those of you who don't know her, and so many of you who do, my good friend, Merissa Hamilton. Come on up.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you all so much. We have been on quite a journey together, haven't we? Absolutely. But we're not done yet. We're just getting started. And so for all of you that are precinct committeemen, can you take a stand? Give them a round of applause. If you have volunteered for a candidate or submitted public comments or done any amount of activism in the last 2 years, please take a stand. So I'm here to tell you something that I think you already knew. But you're the red wave. And so I want to invite you to join FreedomWorks and take the next step together. We have worked very hard at FreedomWorks to create a very cool program called Freedom Teams, and this is to empower you, the grassroots. FreedomWorks exists to serve as a service center to you, so that you can organize within your own neighborhoods, within your own organizations, within your own groups, and be successful at whatever your goals are to advance freedom. And Mark Kelly can't compete against you. So if you are a member of EZAZ, America PAC, or our FreedomWorks Freedom Teams, can you please stand up? Give them a bigger round of applause because they volunteered for a whole lot more work yesterday. So these folks are folks that these people are folks that have decided that they want to contribute a significant amount of time to restore liberty here in Arizona and across the nation. And so FreedomWorks is bringing an incredible program to empower you, every single one of you. You know, when President Donald Trump came for one of his large rally on February 15th, Donald Trump Jr. said, Donald Trump Jr. said, if in November President Trump doesn't win, what's the first thing that would come into your head that you need to do to save our nation? And I'm going to ask you that same thing right now. No matter what happens right now, when you think about all the crises we face, all the crises that our government created, what is one thing that comes to your mind that you could do right now to help and pitch in? And so whatever came to your heart, I'd like you to pick up the card that's on your seat that said straw poll and flip it to the other side. Because FreedomWorks is creating freedom teams, and this is to empower you to do whatever it was, whatever that small little voice, whatever it was that you felt in your heart that you want to do to advance freedom in America and take back our state. We have a very important primary come up, and that's the reason why we have this U.S. Senate forum, so that you can be educated to know who is the most freedom candidate to fire Mark Kelly. So I want to invite you to join us at FreedomWorks to get involved, get engaged. We want to make civic action easy as pie and help you to be coordinated, not just here locally, but at the national level. Because it's not just Mark Kelly we have to fire. We have to fire Pelosi too. So on the back of that card, if you could scan in that QR code if you want to get involved and learn how to take action and be effective so that we can win. We have to win. Everything is on the line. And if you're at home watching this, go to freedomworks.org/action. Join us. You can tell we are such a fun group of people. We have a great time, and we eat a lot of pie. So join us. And with that, I'd like to bring up my good friend, Amy Carney, who's going to tell you how we can empower parents and take back our schools.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm Amy Carney, and I am a mom of 6 here in Arizona, and I'm the Deputy Director of BEST, which is Building Education for Students Together, FreedomWorks Education Reform Initiative. And some of our goals include replacing this awful anti-American divisive curriculum that is coming into our schools. Who wants that? We are also building parent coalitions across this country. Arizona has one of our strongest coalitions. So thank you to all of those who are already in that. Those of you who are not, you've got to join us. We also are looking at expanding educational freedoms and electing strong school board members with conservative values, right? We are all here tonight for this important Senate race. But how many of you know how important it is that we now look at the bottom of our ballot and we look at these nonpartisan school board races? How many of you understand how important it is that we elect new school board members November 8th? Great. So come out and see me out at the BEST table. Follow our YouTube channel at FreedomWorks BEST. We have all kind of education resources, and we would love to help you fight back in your local school district. Thank you.
Well, friends, every company takes on the character of its leader, whether it's a church, a home, or a business organization like ours. It takes on the character, takes on the strength of its leader. I'm very happy and very proud to present to you the president of FreedomWorks, our leader who has impeded and has empowered us with his strength, his courage, and his vision. Welcome, Adam Brandon, President, FreedomWorks.
And just to show how we're a family, CL is the man who married me. So that was the best speech he ever gave. So my name is Adam Brandon, which is, I'm like at airports and someone will be like, let's go, Brandon. And then like, oh, that's me. All right. And we have a little baby at home, and a lot of our friends and neighbors, we have like a dozen little onesies that all say, let's go, Brandon. It's like the most common thing that we own. So we are very pleased to bring this forum. I'm thrilled to see the size of the crowd and the energy that I'm feeling here tonight. This isn't the first forum. We had a forum in Ohio a few months ago. You may have heard it in the news when two candidates got right in each other's faces and almost started swinging at each other. Noah sends me this picture. I'm at a donor meeting, and he gets this picture. He's like, it was an important meeting, so don't call or text unless like something's on fire. And he calls me like, just so you know, some candidates might start brawling. Wasn't our fault. Anyway, they didn't fight, but so hopefully we would promise you tonight there'll be no fisticuffs on this stage this evening. This is a friendly conversation. Oh, you guys want to fight? Come on, save that for November, all right? So I kind of thought I was going to say some things to warm the crowd up, but I don't know if that's really necessary, is that? I think you guys are ready to go. So with that, I think I'm going to tell a couple jokes. I only have two of them. And when I was younger, I spent some time living in Eastern Europe. And so when you live in Eastern Europe, you learn a lot of communism and socialism jokes. So do you guys want to hear some socialism jokes? So every joke in Eastern Europe revolves around standing in a bread line. So there's a couple guys standing at a bread line in Warsaw, and they're standing there. And someone's like, oh my gosh, did you hear Brezhnev is coming to town? I was like, that's it. I'm going to go kill Brezhnev. So he leaves the line. About 8 hours later, he comes back. They're like, well, did you kill Brezhnev? No, there was a line. So I told you I only know two jokes, and like the Lavores aren't even laughing because they've heard these jokes like 5 times. So these guys are standing in a bread line in Warsaw, and this guy's like, man, I can't believe this. 40 years of socialism, we're still standing in lines. And this guy gets out a finger pistol, and is like, hey, you remember what we used to do to guys like you when you'd say stuff like that? And he gets really rattled. He goes home. He goes to his wife. He tells her about what happened there, and this guy, it's so bad. And she's like, what? They're out of bread? No, it's worse. They're out of bullets. Well, I appreciate everyone for coming tonight. We're going to have a great forum. There's a lot of bad things happening in the world, but if you were standing here in front of this crowd, you just feel the energy. I'm really optimistic about this country's future. We could spend a lot of time talking about our problems, But I tell you what how many of you have been involved in anything to do with these school board issues, races, this is a revolution that we're seeing across the country that proves to me we're going to save this republic. The way that you are all getting involved at a local level, you're taking your time, it's not just voting, it's showing up. And if you get involved, we're going to be fine. But I will just tell you, as someone who's not from Arizona, you have a lot of responsibility because you have to pick the best candidate who's going to go to Washington, because in the spring of 2025 is going to be our next chance to pass real legislation. And I tell you what, if we miss this chance in the spring of 2025, it may never happen again. So that is the seriousness I hope you're bringing. So let's have some fun, but let's also make sure you guys that the work is on you now. My night's done. I'm just going to go sit down. So thank you very much for coming.
Good job, Captain. Well, my friends, before our candidates come up, I just want to say a few words to you. Because there is a design now to keep Americans locked in a certain mindset. And friends, I want to just share this with you for just a few minutes. And I trust that it will be an opportunity for you to break out of the mindset that they want you to remain trapped in. All of us live in a three-roomed house. The house of the future, or the room of the future. There's in that house the room of the now that is in that house, and the room of the past that's in that three-roomed house that we all live in. And friends, what progressives want to do to us is trap us in that room of the past. And friends, when you walk into that room of the past, Americans, we can see the pictures on the wall. We remember the faces that were in that room. We remember the things that happened in that room of the past. But when you walk into that room, there's not a picture on the wall, there's not a piece of furniture, there's not a person, there's not a memory that any of us can change. But they want us to stay trapped in that room of the past, where sometimes that room breeds strong emotions that have no place in our American now. They're poisoning the minds of our young people. They're injecting poisonous ideas into their minds. Our founders, when they wrote our Constitution, and it's infused in our founding documents, in the first paragraph of our Constitution, you hear these words: in order to form a more perfect union. Those old white men knew that the union that they were forming was not a perfect union. But over our 245, 46-year period of time, being a nation that we are, we have overcome so many obstacles. But from tonight, here in Phoenix, Arizona, we must send this message that we will not become shackled to those memories of the past. There is an American future that we must move forward to. And we will. We will. We will win this. We will save our republic. And from Arizona tonight, my friends, you are going to get an opportunity to exercise your American right, and that is to make a decision about who will lead, to make a decision about who you want to send to that hill in order to represent you. And friends, let me tell you, there is a war that is being waged right now, and each and every one of you is on the front line. And this is not a time for men and women of cowardice But this is a time for men and women of courage. It is time for us to once again be the Americans that we were intended to be. It is time for us to stand up and push back against those who would steal our republic from us. It is time now for us to stand up and to push back. From your reaction, I have a feeling that the stand up and the pushback is coming from Phoenix, Arizona. Let's send this message to Washington, D.C. Let's do that. So my friends, now for the main event. Our moderator tonight is a former TV news journalist and meteorologist of 15 years who has served in the Phoenix market for nearly a decade. She also covered major news events in California, Oregon, and South Carolina. She recently left the industry just 8 months ago to serve our communities in a completely different capacity, joining the Arizona State Senate Republican Caucus as the Director of Communications. Please join me in welcoming Kim Quintero. Kim, thank you so much for being here tonight. God bless you.
Thank you so much, C.L. Bryant. Does he know how to get this room pumped? Oh my goodness. I am so excited to be here with you tonight. We have such a packed house. This is a very special evening. This is the first time we're going to have all 5 U.S. Senate candidates here. We can hear their voices. We're going to hear what's important to them. And we are going to, hopefully by the end of this night, know who is going to lead the way. We do have a few housekeeping items. Before we get started, first of all, pull out your cell phones. Make sure they're on silent, please. And then also, I know we have a lot of freedom-loving patriots in this room. If you can refrain from cheering or heckling or anything like that during their answers to these questions, that would be much appreciated. All right, so we're going to bring up our candidates one by one. They are going to be announced in alphabetical order, and then I will tell them the rules. So first, if we can, let's bring up Mark Brnovich, Attorney General, Arizona. Welcome, Mark. Next up, Jim Lamon, founder and chairman of DEPCOM Power. Welcome. Next up, we have Blake Masters, former COO at Teal Capital and former president of the Teal Foundation. Welcome. Next up, we have Mick McGuire, former Adjutant General of the Arizona National Guard. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Justin Olson, member of the Arizona Corporate Commission. All right, these guys look ready to rock and roll. They've got their A games. You're not nervous, right? No, not at all. All right, so here are the rules. Ready? Each candidate is going to get 90 seconds for a quick introduction. There will not be any rebuttals during candidate introductions. Afterwards, for each question, candidates will be allotted 2 minutes and 30 seconds to answer. Additional time will not be allowed for rebuttals. So if you would like to use part of your allotted time to rebut, you are able to do so. Candidates are organized on stage alphabetically by last name and will respond to questions in a snake order. So we will start with Mark Brnovich with your introduction.
Hello. Thank you, Kim. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everyone being here this evening. I really, really appreciate it. I think we all recognize, and everyone on the stage recognizes, that Mark Kelly does not represent Arizona values. I mean, we know that he votes with Joe Biden or Chuck Schumer 97% of the time. We know that he votes with Bernie Sanders 9 out of 10 times. And my goodness, Bernie Sanders' wife doesn't agree with him as much as Mark Kelly does. So we need a change in Washington, D.C., and that means we need a principled fighter. And I'm the only candidate up here that's actually been at the forefront of pushing back against not only the Obama administration, but the Biden administration. So whether it was opposing job-killing rules and regulations like the waterways of the U.S. or other ozone rules that Obama tried to promulgate, or whether it was just our recent victory in the Title 42 case when Joe Biden tried to rescind Title 42, we were there, we were arguing those cases. And even recently, last year, I was at the U.S. Supreme Court personally arguing Brnovich v. DNC, which allows states to enact common sense election integrity measures. So as we hear from everybody this evening, let's all be respectful to each other. Let's all make sure that we hear all the differences of opinion. And remember, who up here was fighting? Who filed the first a lawsuit against Joe Biden to stop the vaccine mandate? Who's been on the side of parents? It has been me and it's been our office, because we need to make sure we have the right person to take on Mark Kelly. So thank you very much.
All right. That was Mark Brnovich. Next up, we have Jim Lamon.
Thank you. Guys, Arizona holds the key to the United States of America in the Senate race. We must beat Mark Kelly in this race. You need to pick someone who's a fighter. You hear a lot of talk up here tonight. You hear a lot of talk in the campaign. Pick someone who does things, who's gotten stuff done in this country, who's been a veteran, who's built billion-dollar businesses. Someone you can trust. And I want to put an example of that trust out here, that our southern border is open for invasion on purpose. We have the brave men and women of the Border Patrol. Those gentlemen looked at all candidates and said, we want a fighter. And they unanimously selected the Lamon team to go take it on. Soon thereafter, the Arizona police joined in and said, we unanimously want Jim Lamon to go fight for us in the U.S. Senate. I want to take just a moment to recognize a couple of those brave men and women over here from the National Border Patrol and Arizona Police Association. Ladies and gentlemen, in this race, pick someone you can trust. You got lawyers up here, and you got an engineer who's built companies and served as a paratrooper in the United States Army. Let's go win back our country. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim Lamon. Next up, Blake Masters.
Thank you all for being here. I'm Blake Masters, and with your help, I'm going to beat Mark Kelly in November. We're going to send that guy back to space. You know, as someone who grew up here in Arizona, I met my wife in middle school in Tucson. It's where we live now with our 3 beautiful boys. And just as an American, I look at what Mark Kelly and the Democrats are doing, and it makes me sick. They are destroying this country. The one thing Biden is good at, apparently, is inheriting a stable situation and turning it into a dumpster fire. Okay, that's why we got a border crisis, an inflation crisis, a supply chain crisis. Crime is skyrocketing, and look at what they're doing in our schools. Now, the left, the Democrats, they're the ones pushing this, and so of course I blame them, but it's also weak establishment Republicans who have let it happen. I am going to fight on all those issues. They're all important, but I'm also the only candidate that understands and is addressing the new and modern threats that we face. What about big tech? What about ESG scores? What about Chinese-style social credit systems, critical race theory, and transgender ideology that they're trying to shove down our kids' throats? I say no thank you. It is time to play offense, no more defense, offense. That's why President Trump endorsed me. I'm going to beat Mark Kelly. And pretty soon, you watch, we're going to have a young and dynamic America First caucus in the U.S. Senate. We're going to change the way that place works. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blake Masters. Next up, Mick McGuire.
Good evening, everybody. My name is General Mick McGuire. I stand before you today as someone who's taken an oath to protect and defend the Constitution all of my adult life. During that time, I lived by these three simple rules: faith, family, and duty. If it weren't for the power of the Lord and the love of my family, I wouldn't be standing before you today. But when we talk about duty, each of us has a duty to preserve this republic. Every one of you. And I knew that I could no longer wear the cloth of the nation when I was asked to be part of an illegal occupation of D.C. 2 days after the incident on January 6th. I was the only commanding general in the country to say no. And if you want a message of hope, I held that line for 1 month, told my wife I could not watch this republic come apart at the seams, and 1 month later, 42 of my colleagues said, Mick is right, we're recalling our forces. That, folks, is what the power of one looks like. One person standing against evil. And I ask that each of you understands this. We are raising an army of voters that say, I pick Mick. God bless you.
All right, thank you very much, Mick
debate.
McGuire. Next up, Justin Olson.
Well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with FreedomWorks. Is anybody excited to beat Mark Kelly in November? I think that's something that we can all agree upon. I've got another question for you. Have any of you out there ever been let down by a politician before? Far too many times. And why does that happen? Well, it's because talk is cheap. You know, candidates, we can show up on the campaign trail and we can tell you what you want to hear. But far too many times what happens, well, candidates get elected, we put our passion behind them, and then they get into office and they become part of the problem. They cave to the establishment. They climb the ranks in order to get along, to go along, to get higher in the ranks of the establishment. You know what? I'm running for the United States Senate because we cannot risk putting someone into the United States Senate who's not going to be our conservative champion. I'm the only candidate in this race with a proven conservative record, and that's what sets me apart from my opponents. I've served as the CFO for Turning Point USA. In the state legislature, I fought and defeated the Green New Deal on the Corporation Commission. I blocked Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandate. In the state legislature, I defunded Planned Parenthood, defunded Obamacare. I funded the Border Strike Force. I voted to ban ballot harvesting. I funded the Border Strike Force, and I have been your conservative champion on Capitol Hill. That's what I look forward to doing. That's why I'm running for the United States Senate. Thank you so much.
Justin Olson, thank you very much. Now we're going to head into our main questions. Justin, take a sip of water because we are going to start with you first. Just a refresher, you have about 2 minutes and 30 seconds to answer. Each of you will answer the same questions. If you need me to repeat these questions, I am happy to do so. Just let me know. Question number 1. The Department of Homeland Security reported that last month, the Border Patrol encountered almost 240,000 illegal immigrants along the southern border. With border security being a big priority for Arizonans, what policies would you push in the Senate to protect our state and our nation's borders? Additionally, how would you deal with the millions of illegal immigrants living in our country right now? We'll start with you, Justin.
Thank you so much for that question. This is priority number 1. And in day 1 in the United States Senate, I'm going to introduce a bill to secure our borders. And this is how we're going to do it. It's not rocket science. We're going to follow the example that President Trump set. We're going to finish the wall. We're going to make permanent the Remain in Mexico policy. We're going to properly fund the Border Patrol. And most importantly, we're going to create a uniform, mandatory E-Verify requirement for every employer across the entire country. With these simple reforms, we can regain operational control of the border. We can stop the damage that's being caused by this chaos at our southern border. Because of the failed policies of the Biden administration, we have seen a 134% increase in the amount of fentanyl that's being trafficked across our border. This is dangerous for our American communities. It is killing Americans, and it needs to stop. It's created a humanitarian crisis for the immigrants themselves as well. So that's priority number one. And what will we do once we secure the borders? Well, then we can stop that inflow of the illegal immigration that's coming into our borders. But the question is, what are we going to do with those who are here? You know what? I am never going to support amnesty for those that broke our laws. If we support any type of amnesty, then we're just encouraging more illegal immigration in the future. We've got to stand firm. We've got to stand firm so that we can protect American communities, so that we can protect our American workers, and that we can stop this chaos that's happening at the southern border. You know, it breaks my heart to see these young infants dropped over the border wall and abandoned in the desert by the drug cartels. This should not be happening in the United States of America, and it's because of the failed policies of the Biden administration, enabled by his supporters in Congress like Mark Kelly. I'm going to be the #1 champion for secure borders. I'm going to champion ending this runaway inflation. I'm going to champion the right to life. I'm going to champion the Second Amendment. I've got a proven record of doing just that here in Arizona, where I funded the Border Strike Force, where I supported Senate Bill 1070. I'm the only candidate in this race with a proven conservative record. I've done it here, and I'll do it in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.
All right, Mick, same questions.
On January 21st, 2021, I came into my office after I had submitted my papers to retire, and I had an executive order signed by Joseph Robinette Biden. It said these 3 things. Immediately recall the 1,030 guardsmen under my command deployed to the southwest border and zero out the funding for their payroll. Immediately cease any engineering support to any of the civilian contractors working on the border. And third, there'll be no mutual aid afforded these great Border Patrol agents, Immigration Services, and ICE from any military entity or any other entity under my command. In the very first interview I did, I said, Joe Biden is derelict in his duty. What he has done is tantamount to us deploying a battalion of soldiers to Yemen and cutting off all operational, logistics, and air support and saying good luck. How do we fix it? You can do one thing with 51 votes in the U.S. Senate. Now, my partners up here have all talked about the border. I have deployed guardsmen to the border 4 different times, twice as the commanding general. We can secure that border. What do we need? We need 51 votes to get a minimum of $6 billion appropriated line item to this state to build and complete the wall, reactivate the OH-58 helicopters that were deactivated by Obama in 2014, and re-support and refund the 1,030 guardsmen that were down there. All of the other policies remain in Mexico, E-Verify. We're all right in line with that. We can do this. We can operationalize this, but you have to have somebody that understands how the process works. And in DC, what they've done is they always mark this out of someone else's budget, separate from Homeland Security, and claw the money back. In terms of what to do, here's what you do. No one has a leak at their home and says, get me more mops. They first stop the leak. What do you do with the people? Once you stop the leak, you get them out immediately and do background checks and put them at the end of the line.
Time is up. Thank
God
you,
bless
Mick.
you.
Blake, you're up next.
Well, you know the statistics just as well as I do. It's 225,000 illegals cross that border every single month. You add the getaways, it's probably 300,000. So over 1 year, that's 3.6 million. Well, over 4 years of Biden-Harris, that's 14 million illegal aliens. This is an invasion. I think that what Joe Biden has done at the southern border is criminal. We got some New York Times reporters here. How is that for a headline? Joe Biden is a criminal for what he has done at the southern border. I believe that he needs to be impeached, and he will be impeached when we take the House. And people say, Blake, because the House holds the impeachment and then the Senate, they have the trial. So Blake, how will you vote in the Senate? Well, I got to hear the evidence, but based on the evidence I know that I'll hear, I would vote to convict. Okay, we won't have the votes to do it. You got Collins, Murkowski, Romney. Okay, we got a lot of rhinos in the party that we got to deal with. But Joe Biden deserves to lose his job over this, okay? He's committing high crimes and misdemeanors. He held up his hand and put the other hand on a Bible and swore to faithfully defend and execute the laws of the United States. And a lot of people compare Joe Biden to Jimmy Carter. I think that's unfair to Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter's not competent, and neither is Biden, but I think Carter tried. Biden's not even trying to enforce federal law at the border. The correct amount of illegal immigration, what is it? Zero. So Biden's got to go. Now, it's too easy for candidates to say, when we get in there, we'll pass a good piece of border legislation. It's like, yeah, you can introduce that. You could pass a great piece of legislation out of the House and the Senate, right? We got to finish Trump's wall. I was with President Trump the other day. He said, Blake, you're my guy. Finish that wall. I said, sir, we're going to do it. We got to triple the size of Border Patrol. We need technology. We need E-Verify. But here's the problem. You pass that out of the Congress. You think Biden's going to sign it? He's not going to sign it, and we can't afford to wait for 2 more years. So here's what we do. In 23 and 2024, we play hardball. I won't vote as a U.S. Senator for Biden's funding for his Department of Homeland Security unless and until he restarts construction of the border wall and we get some border security. We have to play hardball. What do you do with the people already here? The only thing the federal government is really good at right now is efficiently ferrying these people across the interior, right? We don't actually know where they are. But I'll tell you what, when they pop up, when they have any negative interaction with law enforcement, boom, deported. Back to El Salvador, back to Yemen, back to wherever they came from.
All right, thank you, Blake.
Thank you.
Next stop, Jim.
Thank you. My fellow patriots, I think you would agree with me that this invasion of our country is intentional, correct? These Border Patrol men and women here tonight represent Brandon Judd for us, who is the president of the entirety of the 21,000 border agents. He takes his job very seriously. He is, in fact, down on call on the Texas border tonight, and these 2 gentlemen here in his stead, this lady and gentleman. Also here, Marian Mendoza, who understands the lack of that not being enforced as an angel mom when her son was killed by the illegal. These border agents interviewed all of the candidates on the stage. And again, as I said earlier, unanimous. The chief law enforcement officer did not get that. Blake was last. They came and said, Jim, we must have a fighter. We must have someone who will stand up. So guys, how do we do that? I'm a hands-on business guy. I listen to the experts. Just like when I build billion-dollar coal, gas, and solar plants on time, on budget, you listen to your experts. And those are the Border Patrol. What do they say do? Jim, we need remain in Mexico, number 1. We can stop everybody tomorrow. That is by the law, by the way, the law of the land. It must be enforced. My job is to do everything in the U.S. Senate to shut down business in the U.S. Senate until we get back to remaining Mexico being enforced. As we had it in 2020, next we finish the wall, next we E-Verify, as we did in my company of 1,800 here in Arizona, and it works. What do you do when people violate it? The hiring manager and the CEO need to do a little jail time. If you do that, that word will get across this country immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, go and vote this year for someone you can trust. Not lawyers. You got 2 of them up here. Go with someone who has built businesses, someone who gets stuff done, someone you can trust. Save the sovereignty of our country. Put me in, and I'll go make it happen, guys. Thank you.
All right, Jim. Thank you very much. Mark, you're up to bat next. No. I haven't even said anything yet. Let me just say one thing.
we all recognize and we all know, everyone in this room understands the catastrophe that's at our southern border. Obviously, we've lost adjectives to describe it. But one of the things that I said at the very beginning, I think we all need to keep in mind is we got a lot of folks up here that are, a lot richer and a lot, savvier, a lot more, sophisticated. But so the question is, what have they actually done? And so when I was at the U.S. Supreme Court, arguing against the Biden administration that was trying to give government benefits to non-citizens, not one single person on this stage was up there with me. When we were successful in federal court stopping the rescission of Title 42, not one of these folks was up there with me. When I sued our colleges and universities, when we were at the state Supreme Court arguing that they shouldn't be allowed to give tuition for people that didn't have legal status, there wasn't one person up here that was with me. And so I think it's important to note, look, I know people are supporting various candidates here tonight, but it's important, what have folks actually done? Because there's a problem. When they had a moment to stand up, I was in the courtroom. I was in the courtroom fighting, pushing back against the Biden administration. And we can talk all we want about, more resources and deploying this and deploying that. But if you have a president that won't enforce the law, it doesn't mean anything, because it's not about the people, it's about the policy. And what we need to do is enforce the law. So whether it was building the border wall, which we sued President Biden over, the Title 42 policy, the Remain in Mexico, the list goes on and on. We've actually been at the forefront in the courtroom fighting those fights and taking those slings and arrows. Look, I remember my first beer too. I went to ASU. Let me finish talking, okay? Thank you very much. Because here's the bottom line. No, seriously. No. Look, here's the bottom line. I am a lawyer, and I've been to the Supreme Court, and I've been argued on behalf of Arizona numerous times. I'm very proud of that. I'm a first-generation American. I'm living the American dream. I'm not going to apologize for being in the court fighting for Arizona and our constitutional rights. And whether it was at the Goldwater Institute, whether it was a prosecutor, I've stood up when Arizona needed me, and I hope you stand up for me. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. We are on to question number 2. Mark, take a sip, because we are going to start with you next. Here is question number 2. With government spending being one of the biggest drivers of inflation, and with reports that Medicare and Social Security will be insolvent by 2026 and 2033 respectively, what should be done to keep the promise that the federal government made to current beneficiaries? What should retirement security or financial freedom look like for the next generation? Mark?
Well, first and foremost, folks like my mom, who worked not only one job but 2 jobs most of her life, the federal government made a promise to her, and I think as Americans we have to keep our promise to hardworking taxpayers. But we all recognize in this room the federal government is spending money we don't have. I mean, we know that the debt is at the largest ratio to the gross domestic product in the history of the United States, at more than 120% now. We know that during the COVID, the government was printing money we don't have. So what we need to start doing is looking at federal spending overall and reducing the size and scope of the federal government. And when it comes to entitlement programs, the very first thing we need to do is look at how that money is being spent. Once again, I'm very proud that our office is one of the leading prosecutors in the entire country prosecuting Medicaid and Medicare fraud and abuse. So we need to make sure that the deadbeats and the cheats out there are identified and prosecuted so we don't have that waste. And additionally, before we start talking about any other programs, I think we need to look at the federal government holistically in the budget. And so one of the things that I've consistently talked about is, why do we even have a federal Department of Education? There are folks like Mike Lee in the Senate that are working on bills that say that the federal government, you cannot require teaching critical race theory in order to get federal funding. But instead, the more fundamental question is, why do we have people in DC and in politics that keep voting for a bigger and bigger federal bureaucracy that's trying to indoctrinate and undermine our values? I'm very proud of the fact that I live in the same neighborhood I grew up in, and my kids are able to go to charter schools. And that should be a state choice. A state choice. Because once you cede that authority to the federal government, you're never getting it back. And so we need to make sure that we look at the federal government holistically. And the Federal Department of Education, what the Biden administration is doing in the latest budget, the more than $4 trillion that was spent on COVID relief. And by the way, I will add that we've sued President Biden over the COVID relief bill that doesn't allow states to cut taxes, which I would ask you, why is it the federal government can give stimulus checks, but the state of Arizona can't cut income taxes? Because it's all about federal control. And so we need someone in Washington, D.C. pushing back against the overreach of the federal government and making sure that we keep our promise to seniors, but at the same time we eliminate that fraud, waste, and abuse.
Mark, thank you very much. Jim, you're up next.
Ladies and gentlemen, I believe it is immoral to put more debt on our kids and our grandkids in this country. The only person on this stage, myself, who has created tens of thousands of jobs in this country, building billion-dollar companies, and we built those on no debt. It is very possible when you set yourself about to set priorities in your country. You know, we have spending out of control because we have people, some of them here tonight, that talk and talk. Guys, it's time in this country to get things done. Our country is at stake. Our currency is at stake. I have said on the website, and I'll hold my promise to you, I will never, ever sign another debt increase for our country. We must live within our means, and it's very possible and easy. I won't say easy, it is very doable at $4 trillion we're sending to the federal treasury. So how do we do it? Number one is Social Security and Medicare will be saved, period. Those are contracts that we entered into in order to get that money to the federal government that will be there. But we've got a lot of work to do to get there. Entitlements. We have 23% waste, fraud, and abuse according to Heritage Foundation and the Disability Fund. Got to stop. We have payments going to illegals in this country from great paying taxpayers. Got to stop. We got to start closing departments, just like in business. When you have departments that don't work, you close them. I'll agree with Mark on that point. Easy targets, Department of Education, Department of Energy, and more. Let's start getting rid of assets that should not be in the federal government. That's taxpayer money. Sell the Tennessee Valley Authority, bring in those hundreds of billions, start paying down the national debt. So guys, we're not going to be able to cut our way out of this, though. We're going to have to start growing this economy. How do you do that? Just what we've done in my company. We worked hard. We brought back American manufacturing into this country. You know, just like in this iPhone, it's about 50% Chinese. Same in the power industry. We got that number to 5%. Even though Blake's attacking me for that, I stand proud. 5%, that means 45% more American jobs in this country. Let's get back to mining. Let's grow this economy as well as cutting the federal government, getting it out of our face. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Blake, you're up next.
The federal government spends way too much money. I was thinking about it. You think it's 10,000 times or 100,000 times bigger than Thomas Jefferson ever could have imagined, right? We don't have a revenue problem. The federal government has enough money. We have a spending problem, right? But I've actually heard, I won't name names because that would be rude, but I've actually heard some of my competitors up here take the undisciplined, easy way out and just say, we got to slash entitlements. We got to cut, because that's where the money is. And here's the thing, we do need entitlement reform, but we can't just slash entitlements. It's more complicated than that, right? We can't pull the rug out from seniors who are currently receiving Social Security, who are currently receiving Medicare, right? People have built their financial lives around these programs. And so how to reform the system in a way that doesn't actually hurt the people who paid into it, right? We got to cut the knot at some point, though, because I'll tell you what, I'm not going to receive Social Security. Right? I'm a millennial, I'm a little bit younger than my competitors here. I think that's a good thing, by the way. I think the Senate could use a dose of energy. But my kids, they're not going to receive Social Security, and we need fresh and innovative thinking, right? Maybe we should privatize Social Security, right? Private retirement accounts, get the government out of it past a certain point. Because the government, it is just too big. I think we need to shutter entire departments. I agree, let's get rid of the Department of Education. Unconstitutional, and every measure by which you can measure the quality of education has just gotten worse since 1979 when Jimmy Carter foisted the Department of Education on us. How about the ATF? While we're going through the alphabet agencies, can we get rid of the ATF? That would save a little bit of money. I love alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, don't get me wrong. But the government sub-agency that regulates it, not so much. Okay, my dad actually has a shirt that says, ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, should be a convenience store, not a government agency. We do have to cut. You know, I remember being worried about the national debt when it was $7 trillion. That was under George W. Bush. Why do we keep electing conservatives that just add to the national debt, right? But now it's $30 trillion. Now there's modern monetary theory, this pseudo-academic BS that says it doesn't matter how much you spend. This is Democrat logic. Well, we're paying for it now. Inflation in the greater Phoenix metro is 20 to 30%. This is Joe Biden's fault. This is Mark Kelly's fault. We will tie them to this failed record in November. That's why we're going to win big. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Blake. Next up, Mick.
Yeah, the quickest way to control spending in D.C. is to know where the money is going. Right now, 23 cents on the dollar is staying within a 50 nautical mile radius of D.C. You want to control behavior? Break the federal employees unions immediately. We have digitized or virtualized all of the services that the bureaucratic state provides. So take each of these agencies immediately and give them a 10% haircut. And if they say, well, wait a minute, we can't do that, I say, wait a minute. You made all your services virtual. You know what that does to your people? It makes them virtually unnecessary. And, you know, Hamilton and Jefferson reminded us that the greatest threat to the Republic was a large standing army and oppressive taxation. Why does it matter? You saw in 2018 when they said they want to abolish ICE, the radical left. In 2020, they said defund the police. In 2022, I left a formation that has forced compulsory obedience in the ranks. You know what it's going to do to the force? It's going to destroy morale, destroy esprit de corps, advance the theocracy of wokeism. And when you're figuring out who to elect, you name me another candidate on the stage that you can sit on the other side of the dais and take on those two things, a large standing army and oppressive taxation. Just think about that. Because when we get to November, no one will care who won the primary if we're not able to square up with Mark Kelly and take it on in a way that we know we can do it with 51 votes. You don't have 60 votes. So you have hearing after hearing after hearing with Fauci and OSHA and people that have weaponized the bureaucratic state against the American people. And we stand the line for those fine young men and women that have signed the back of that check that says they'll give their life in defense of this nation. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Mick. Justin, you're up next.
Thank you for that question. We've got to protect the entitlement programs that folks are relying on who are already retired. And for those who are near retirement, folks have paid into these systems for their entire life. And how are we going to protect that? We've got to get under control the out-of-control spending in Washington, D.C. We've got to balance our budget. Now, I'm the only candidate on this stage who has actually done that. I was elected to the state legislature in 2010. You guys remember the environment, right? Obama was in the White House. We had too big to fail. We had unsustainable spending. We had corporate bailouts. And at the state level, we had a $3.6 billion budget deficit. And what did the legislature do? Well, they said, we can't balance this budget. They passed a record property tax increase, a record sales tax increase. They sold the state capitol and debt financed it back for years into the future just to pay the salaries and benefits of that fiscal year. I was frustrated. We all were frustrated. This was the year of the Tea Party. It felt a lot like right now, like the environment, the energy that we feel right now when we're so frustrated with what's going on in Washington, D.C. under the Biden administration. Well, I did something about it. I said, look, we've got to expect more of our elected officials. We should expect them to live within their means. So I ran for the legislature. and I was elected, and I delivered on the promise of balancing the budget. In my first year as the appropriations chairman, I passed my successful budget bills that were the first structurally balanced budget that the state had seen in years. And we did it without raising debt. Thank you. We did it with no new taxes and no budget gimmicks. But we went beyond that. You know what? I thought the government should not be asking Arizonans who had been hit hard by the Great Recession to dig deeper into their pockets and pay more of their hard-earned resources for their government. We needed to get Arizonans back to work. And how could we do that? Well, we could do that by growing the economy, by getting the government out of the way of the private sector. So I introduced legislation that was signed into law to cut your income taxes, to decrease the regulatory burden that was placed on the economy. And it had the desired impact. Forbes magazine actually recognized Arizona as the #1 state for projected job growth in that fiscal year. We got Arizonans back to work by cutting the income tax and reducing that burden that the government was placing on the economy. That's what I'm going to do in Washington, D.C. I'm going to fight for balanced budgets. I'm going to fight for decreasing the tax burden, decreasing the regulatory burden, ending this runaway inflation, and empowering American workers. Thank you.
All right, Justin, don't go far. You're next. Again, third question. There are a lot of issues with China, including the COVID-19 outbreak, human rights violations, and potential conflict with Taiwan. But with China being one of America's biggest economic and trade partners, including here in Arizona, would you work to promote free trade with China? And how would you hold China accountable?
Thank you for that question. China is an existential threat to the United States. We've got to protect American interests. You know, China has actually successfully tested a hypersonic glided missile defense system. Hypersonic glided missile that can evade our missile defense systems. This is something that is extraordinarily scary. We've got to properly invest in our military might so we can deter the aggressions from our adversaries that are advancing under the weak leadership of the Biden administration. When it comes to trade, you know, I think that we've got to support the policies that empower American workers that were exemplified by President Trump. You know, one of my opponents actually made millions by selling taxpayer-subsidized solar panels imported from China. Now, you mentioned the COVID. You mentioned the COVID outbreak that came from China. One of my other opponents was actually the director of the Arizona Department of Emergency and Military Affairs here in Arizona when they trampled on our constitutional rights. They led the COVID response that everyone hated. They shut down our schools, they shut down our businesses, they shut down our churches, they closed our parks and our gyms. They masked our children and isolated our children. Now, this is something that we cannot stand for. It should never happen again, and it will never happen under my leadership. Now, this is a critical liability because if we have a candidate that has any one of these liabilities, a candidate that let us down on election integrity, or a candidate whose campaign is funded with a $13.5 million gift from a Facebook board member, then our candidate is going to be liable to being defeated by Mark Kelly. If we're going to defeat Mark Kelly, we must nominate someone with a proven conservative record, and that's why I'm running. I'm the candidate with a proven conservative record. I've been the CFO for Turning Point USA. I've cut your taxes. I've defunded Planned Parenthood. I've defunded Obamacare. I funded the Border Strike Force. I voted to ban ballot harvesting on the Corporation Commission. I fought and defeated the Green New Deal. I blocked Biden's unconstitutional vaccine mandate. I am the only candidate with a proven conservative record, and I can beat Mark Kelly.
Mick, you're up next.
Well, thank you. Justin, I want to make sure you understand, be careful what you wish for. You believe that having me in uniform and turning my forces on the governor to usurp his authority is better than me holding the line against unelected bureaucrats occupying D.C., then you don't understand the role of the military. And if you don't understand the role of the military, you're not fit to sit in this position. Relative to China, China is the greatest existential threat to this nation. But I'm not worried about China attacking us. I'm worried about China doing this, killing all of our children by importing poison from China, moving it up the West Coast. 90% of the world's fentanyl crosses through the Yuma and Tucson sector, and we lost 100,000 Americans in 2020. That's 125 infantry battalions. If we had lost 125 infantry battalions in 2020, it is all Kim would be talking to us about tonight. Why is China a problem? Here's the reality. Many of you are veterans. We can conscript the patriotic capital of this nation and get Rosie the Riveter out. The problem is we got no place to send her. If you can't produce your own PPE, your own pharmaceuticals, your own ships, your own chips, your own gunpowder, your own steel, you only got enough to fight for 90 days. You don't win a war by being better at putting warheads on foreheads. You're better at sustaining and maintaining and doing the logistics to break the other guy. And China is crushing us in this area. That's why we have got to bring critical manufacturing home. What will that do to the economy? There is no country on the face of the earth that has a greater depth of innovative spirit and natural resources. If you unleash both of those things, the innovative spirit of the people and the ability to tap into land, oil, water, minerals, ag, fishery, timbers, and gut the environmental extremists, that's how you win.
Thank you, Mick. Blake, you're up next.
Well, I guess it's that stage in the campaign when the sharp elbows come out, huh? Facebook board member, ex-Facebook board member Peter Thiel, the one America First billionaire that we have. Okay, not a fan. I think he's great. Okay, and you know what? I'm proud of Peter. He was the biggest backer of business to President Trump. He helped Trump get elected. I helped with that. If you know other America First billionaires, give them my cell phone number, okay? Get you a candidate who can marshal some resources because we're going to need them come November to beat Mark Kelly, okay? And speaking of President Trump taught us something very interesting. This question, it's a good question. It's also a trick question. There's no such thing as free trade with China. Okay? Doesn't exist. China is a communist, totalitarian dictatorship. There's no private industry in China. Okay, they have their thumb on the scale. The CCP is always subsidizing domestic industry. Trump taught us this. He was a great foreign policy president. You have to go back in history until Ronald Reagan to find the last great foreign policy president. Reagan did his job. He defeated Soviet communism. But then it was 20 years of mindless, bipartisan, zombie politics with respect to China. George H.W. Bush, right? Let's help China. Let's help them industrialize. Maybe they'll liberalize and become a Western liberal democracy. Well, that was naive. And then Clinton inherited the football and pursued the same dumb policies. Okay, now George W. Bush is in office. Oops, it starts to become pretty darn negligent to not course correct. Okay, China wasn't liberalizing, they were eating our lunch. And then you get Obama, and as late as 2014, Joe Biden was saying, China, come on, man, they'll never catch up. Criminally negligent. And then Trump busts on the scene and busts up the establishment and says, are you guys stupid? You are giving China the keys to the kingdom. What is wrong with you? Such a healthy correction. So we needed those Trump tariffs, right? There's someone in the race here that literally lobbied against President Trump's tariffs on China in 2018. I wonder why he did that. But it was good for America. I agree with General McGuire. We need to repatriate manufacturing. We need to be a country that makes stuff. Okay? And China, they're not just an economic rival, they're a military rival. We're already in a Cold War with China. We need to win it, pray that it doesn't become a hot war. But with this woke military that is apparently happening, we need to de-wokeify it. We need to get serious about China. This is the 20-year fight, the 30-year
All right,
fight.
thank you, Blake.
We got to take China down. Thank you.
Jim, you're up next.
So let's be clear that China's not our adversary. China is the enemy of the United States of America. These guys want this country, and they're doing a darn good job of it by buying off politicians, buying into the media, buying this country. When I set about in our company here in Arizona, which became a $1 billion company in 8 years with a great team of 1,800 great Americans, including 22% of those as veterans. One of our chief goals was we were going to take that metric in the power industry, as I said earlier, just like in a laptop where it's about 50%, and the power industry is about 50%. We did yeoman's work. We worked hard with American suppliers and companies to get that number down to 5%. The incentive plan of the company was paying out millions because those guys are doing such a good job in bringing back onshoring manufacturing. So I know something about that, guys. So send somebody to D.C. who's got the credentials, not talk, not ever been in business, not ever created thousands of jobs. I've been fortunate to do that. I know industry. I know how the Chinese play. They do not need to be in this country. You know, we have this crazy thing with the politicians in D.C. where we have issued 400,000 visas for the Communist Chinese part of this country. That number needs to be 0. Go home. Shouldn't be on our businesses, shouldn't be on a stock market, shouldn't be buying our land. They need to go home. But to do that, we're going to have to bring our manufacturing back, continue the process we started in my company, and set the example. CPAC gave us a great award for being one of those companies that stood forward, and one of the greatest accomplishments as a percent of bringing billions of dollars back to American companies. Very proud of it. So we'll set that example. Treat these guys like MER. We must get our strategic resources in order, because people that talk is what's gotten this country in the shape it's in. And that's why I'm running, guys. Like I like to say, I sold that beautiful company last year. I don't need a job, but by gosh, we need a country. If we look at it from a standpoint of our critical mining, Arizona is the motherlode of mining, and we could tomorrow be opening manganese mines with 7,000 great workers at $72,000 just 14 miles outside of Nogales. Bring American work home. Bring it to American people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Mark.
Well, let me begin by actually answering the question. Taiwan is an ally of the United States. We have a legal and a moral obligation to do everything we can to allow them to defend themselves. China is the greatest strategic threat to the United States. They're at war with us. Their doctrine is at war with us militarily, economically, and technologically. And so we have to recognize the problem. And I know everyone in this room, I guarantee you there's not one single person other than maybe that guy from the New York Times that thinks it's okay to work with China, right? We all know that China is our adversary. They are our enemy. And so we need to do everything we can to push back against them and to bring those manufacturing jobs here to the United States. We understand that. And as one of the other folks up here mentioned, it's not about free trade, it's about fair trade. And we know that the Chinese Communist Party literally engages in dumping, they subsidize their industry, they manipulate their currency, the yuan, and in order to try to undermine the United States of America. I know as a prosecutor, they are sending precursor chemicals into Mexico that the cartels are using to make fentanyl and to make methamphetamine, which are killing our kids, our neighbors, our nieces, nephews, sons, and daughters. So China is literally at war with the United States. We need to push back. On the other hand, Taiwan, the technology industry in this country is so important. There's some cell phones out there, people with their phones. Almost 50% of our semiconductors are coming from Taiwan. In fact, the Taiwanese are building a semiconductor plant here in Arizona. So there are not only economic reasons, but there are geopolitical and strategic reasons to do everything we can to support our ally Taiwan. And I will add that when I just this week, we talk about lawyers, we led a coalition supporting Israel and supporting legislation that push back against the anti-BDS movement. And so we have an obligation. We have an obligation to support our two staunchest allies during the Cold War and right now, and that is Israel and Taiwan. And when I'm in the US Senate, I'm gonna do everything I can to have our allies back. Because what the last 2 years of the Biden administration has shown is that when you're weak and incompetent, it invites aggression.
Thank you, Mark. All right, you're going to be starting this next question. Over the last decade, social media apps have dominated American lives for better or worse. One of the biggest concerns that we have with these companies is their unfair censorship practices. Does the federal government have a role in addressing this concern? And if so, how would you address it?
Well, one of the big things that we can do is start by addressing Section 230 of the federal code. So, this is what's happened with the big tech industry. They are these giants. In fact, these tech companies now, like Google, control more market share than Standard Oil did at the height of its power and its monopoly. And I know there's folks up here on the stage. In fact, one of them wrote a book that advocated for the power of monopolies. And I know that the answer to big tech is not by having someone that's financed by big tech and made all their money in big tech telling you that they're going to address the problem. Because we've seen that too much, where someone's beholden to an industry. Someone is beholden to an industry, and so they can't make those changes effectively. And so the first thing we need to do is to make sure the tech companies have skin in the game. And what I mean by that, and I know Jim kind of bags on lawyers sometimes, he doesn't like lawyers, but I will tell you this, whether it's the airlines, whether it's the drug companies, when you provide companies with immunity where they can't be sued for what they do, there's no way to protect consumers. In fact, one of the things that I have pushed for is allowing the attorney generals to be able to file those lawsuits to make sure that we can keep these big tech companies accountable. And in fact, I am the first AG in the entire country that sued Google in state court. In fact, that lawsuit is going through. That lawsuit is going through the Superior Court right now, and that trial is set for this fall. And the tech companies have done, Google, they've done everything they can to stop it. And I will tell you, there's a lot of orders by the court now what we can share and not share, but make no mistake about it. What's happening with big tech right now is you are the product. They are collecting all this information without your knowledge and consent. They use it to manipulate you, and we have seen what they did in the last election cycle where they put their finger on the scale and intentionally cancel or make sure that people with contrary points of view are not heard. But the one good news, I will tell you this, I'll tell you this, is that I filed the first lawsuit in the country against Google in state court. Those are receipts, that's what the kids call it nowadays, just so you know. But I will tell you this, is that government and regulators can't predict what's going to happen 5 years from the future. So we have to be really careful when you invite the government in to try to control an industry that's so innovative and disruptive.
All right, Jim, you're next.
So my fellow patriots, I served 6 years military as a paratrooper officer, engineer officer, to defend our First Amendment. This tech world is evil. These guys have gone so far as to hide every story about Hunter Biden's laptop. I mean, we can make miniseries out of what's on that laptop. My God. This is criminal to our country. It's tearing us apart. Having two systems of justice and two systems of First Amendment, it's got to stop. So guys, I mean, it's just plain and simple, straight up. Thank goodness Elon stepping up and taking one of those out of the way for us. But guys, as Blake said, elbows getting sharp, guys. I got to call it like it is up here. This guy that's the Facebook board member, $13 million, not maybe 15 to Blake. Do we really need that to buy a seat for Arizona from California? I mean, guys, and even moreover, this couple of last weeks, the worst swamp creature in D.C. called Club for Growth. These are the most open borders, pro-China people would ever want to meet, throwing $2 million against me for being pro-American, America first. So guys, we have absolutely got to get to a point where we take on these big issues. Don't go with talk. Go with somebody who's built billion-dollar businesses, built billion-dollar coal, gas, and solar plants on time or budget with big, huge teams and veterans first, and is pro-American to the core. That's what we need, someone who will stand up for this country and stand up. The last thing we need to take on big tech is somebody from big tech, okay? And lastly, guys, I kind of got the Thiel thing, I understand that, but in 2020, boom, he abandoned Trump. Is that the right way? No, we don't need something bought in Arizona. Guys, I am taking 0 PAC dollars, 0 lobbyist dollars, and 2-term limit and donate my salary in Arizona. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Blake.
I sort of think, tell me if you disagree, I think to have a prayer at taking on big tech, you should actually put someone in the Senate who understands it. Can't even talk for 3 minutes about it. Well, here's the thing. I've made restraining big tech a central pillar of my campaign. I started my career in Silicon Valley. I know these companies. I know the harms they perpetrate. I know their business models. I know their rank and file engineers, the middle managers, and some of the executives. And let me tell you, the problem is way worse than you think. Okay, big tech is an existential threat to this country. It starts with censorship. I continue to be astonished that they got away with banning President Trump. Twitter, Facebook, they kicked him off while he was president. That should be illegal. They kicked off my friend, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's endorsed me in this race. Well, here's the thing about Congresswoman Greene. She's in the House. The House terms are 2 years, so you're always running for re-election. So she's an elected official and a candidate. And when you kick off a candidate, that starts to look a lot like election interference. That's what I worry most about with big tech, okay? I think weeks before the mules got to work, big tech, Facebook, Twitter, they had already thrown this election for Joe Biden. Okay, they did it by censoring the Hunter Biden laptop story. Hunter Biden, pray for his soul. That guy's messed up, man. He's got nefarious business dealings from China, Ukraine, which you're not really allowed to talk about. But the New York Post said, wow, 10% for the big guy. I wonder who's the big guy? Who's the big guy? Could it be Joe Biden? They published a bombshell story, expose, October of 2020. This is weeks before people voted. And Facebook and Twitter, they sucked that right off the internet. And if you know anything about big tech and mass media and how headlines manipulate voter behavior, that's the election right there. That's it. And at least that was transparent censorship, because we all noticed. Okay, here I am 15 months later complaining about it. What about Google? I worry most about Google. I know how it works. I'm telling you, they have the motive and opportunity and capability to swing a presidential election. When I'm in the Senate, we're going to, get rid of Section 230, but we're going to regulate Facebook and Twitter as common carriers. We're going to treat them like the phone company. We will ban them from discriminating against you for your political views. And I will convene a team of software engineers. I'll oversee it myself. We're going to force them into Google in the weeks before an election to make sure that Google cannot manipulate its search engine algorithms for the purpose or effect of throwing an election to the Democrats. You don't get me in there, you don't get free and fair elections. I promise you that. Thank you.
All right, Mick.
Check. Check. We're going to check in the 4-ship here and take off. All right. I'm old enough to remember when everything on the internet was true, and you need to send all your stuff to Nigeria, and they'll send you back millions of dollars. So here's my issue. Big tech has created an environment where they are manipulating public behavior in our elections, in your thought, in where you go. And I believe the government's role here is to provide you a digital bill of rights where your data is your data, and if someone wants to sell it, use it, profit from it, they need to let you know. That, more than anything else, will help control this problem, because I want to warn all of you. The response to bad speech, misinformation, and disinformation is not suppression and censorship, it's more speech. It's more speech. And we have to be able to provide a resource by which all of us have an opportunity to exchange ideas, rely on the ability of our citizens to critically think, challenge the assumptions, and determine truth. when someone is manipulating that, and we have a generation of children that exalt or believe that they're either an oppressor or a victim, and they're not taught to critically think, then we got big issues. We got big issues. And the truth to fixing the problem with big tech is to turn to those that have been in big tech and say, fix it from within. The government has never fixed a damn thing with a 2,000-mile screwdriver. And if they're unwilling to fix it, then we use the lawyers and the rest up here to take action. The lawyers, just so you know, have an opportunity to talk about all of these things, but in 5 years, we may or may not get an adjudicated outcome. You need someone that acts and doesn't talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mick. Justin.
Thank you. I think that this is something that all of us agree on, is that we've got to take on big tech. We've got to protect the public space and the freedom of speech. You know, I think we all agree that we've got to repeal Section 230. This was enacted to give immunity to folks because they were going to act as a bulletin board where everybody had equal opportunity to post their thoughts and their comments. Well, have they acted as a bulletin board? Have we all had equal opportunity to share our thoughts? No, of course not. They've been curating content. We did not see the story. Many voters did not see the story about Hunter Biden's laptop. Now, when they're curating content, they are publishers, and they should be treated just like any publisher, just like the New York Times, just like the Washington Post. They should be subject to liability if they publish something that is inaccurate, that is false. But we need to go beyond that as well. You know what? When Jen Psaki says that she's flagging posts and sending them to these big tech companies for misinformation, this is a clear violation of our constitutional rights of freedom of speech. And we've got to stand up, and we've got to protect our constitutional rights. Our constitutional rights are under attack. They've been under attack on many different fronts, from the Second Amendment to the First Amendment that we're discussing now. But in the last minute that I have, I want to share just an additional thought, and that is that, you know, I mentioned the concern about making sure that we put our best foot forward to beat Mark Kelly. You know, we all agree that we've got to defeat Mark Kelly, and we've got to replace him with a proven conservative. And that's why I bring up these liabilities that my opponents have. Each of these opponents, they're great folks. I've enjoyed getting to know each of them on the campaign trail. But if we nominate a candidate who received $13.5 million from a Facebook board member, that's going to be an albatross that can be hung around that candidate's neck by Mark Kelly, and we could lose that election. And the list goes on. We've got to make sure that we do not nominate a candidate with these liabilities to go up against Mark Kelly. Look, I'm hopeful that this will be a red wave, that a bag of potatoes would beat Mark Kelly, but there is too much at stake. We cannot risk not putting our best foot forward, and that's why I'm running, your proven conservative champion, to beat Mark Kelly and stand for our constitutional rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Okay, you're going to answer this next question first. Democrats in Washington have tried to federalize our elections by passing bills like H.R. 1, which give the federal government almost absolute control over state-run elections. Should Senate Republicans address election integrity issues such as mandatory voter ID and bans on ballot harvesting, or should Congress defer to each state legislature on how to manage these elections?
Thank you. Election integrity is going to be a top priority when I'm in the United States Senate. We've got to protect the security of our elections. And I'm the only candidate in this race with a proven record on election integrity. In the state legislature, I voted to ban ballot harvesting to protect the security of our elections. You know, one of my opponents was in a position to actually enforce that widespread ban on ballot harvesting that we saw occur in 2018, and he let us down. When I get to the United States Senate, I'm going to champion our constitutional rights, and I'm going to fight tooth and nail to defeat H.R. 1, this federal takeover of our elections. You know, Mark Kelly, our Arizona senator, actually voted to blow up the filibuster in order to pass the Freedom to Cheat Act, in order to tell us that we cannot put in place a voter identification mandate for every ballot that's cast. So what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to introduce a bill that empowers states to put in place these voter identification mandates for every ballot that's cast. And I'm going to work with my state partners here to make sure that every ballot that comes into the count has included with it a voter identification verification. We've got to protect the integrity of our elections. There is so much more that we can do. You know, we saw in 2018 the circumstantial evidence was overwhelming that the Democrats harvested ballots in violation of this ban that we put in place. The AP called the races for all 9 of the statewide Republican candidates on election night. They don't make that decision lightly. They did a significant amount of statistical analysis, and they said, these outstanding ballots, they cannot turn the outcome of this election. And they called the race. And what did the Democrats do? Well, they said, no, it's too close to call, because they knew what they had done. They had broken this ban on ballot harvesting. They had collected these ballots against the law, and they had dropped these ballots off in crates full at the polling places, and it was enough to change the election. Those of us that were in positions, we said, look, we've got to investigate and we've got to prosecute, because this circumstantial evidence is compelling. Dinesh D'Souza now has demonstrated the physical evidence that this occurred. We've got to put a stop to it.
All right, Justin. Mick, you're up next.
Yeah, H.R. 1, Senate Bill 1, and H.R. 4 have got to be stopped. Again, the federal government cannot take control of our elections. That said, that's right. That said, there are some provisions in federal law about voting. One of them that I believe pertains to the last question of this last election. I voted absentee military overseas in November of 1990 before the Gulf War, living in a tent. I filled out my ballot and signed the back. Arizona is one of 3 states that allows military members to vote by digits on email through an IP address. In 2016, there were just over 6,000 military absentee ballots that came into Maricopa County. In 2020, there were 10,457. In that same period of performance, I was the commanding general of the Guard. That's a 68% increase in digital ballots that were submitted, and an 11% decrease in overseas deployments. I believe that the chief law enforcement officer in the state has reasonable suspicion to open a criminal investigation into that. People complain about different things, but you have lawyers for a reason. And people ask me, what can I do about it? I said, I'm an unemployed general running for the United States Senate. But there is somebody on this stage that can act on that. And the truth of the matter is, you can't play this game where you say you're serious about this and you're not going to comment on criminal investigations, then publish an interim report about a criminal investigation and expect us to take you seriously in that capacity. That is the most important thing.
All right, thank you, Mick. All right, Blake, you're up next.
Well, that was a memorable moment. Hey, guys, tell me if this is too extreme. I don't think that in the United States of America, you should be able to cast a vote without showing ID. I also don't think in the United States of America, you should be able to register to vote without proving you're a U.S. citizen. How about that? Now, it's true we want states and municipalities to run their own elections. We do not want to federalize or nationalize elections. That's what the Democrats want to do. Okay, but I'm okay with some baseline federal standards here. Those two I just said. You gotta show ID in order to vote, and you gotta be a US citizen in order to vote. Okay? The constitutional hook for this is in the Constitution, right? The federal government, it's right there. States are guaranteed a Republican form of government. Well, if California or Oregon or Arizona is allowed to let people vote without showing an ID, I don't think you can guarantee a Republican form of government. Okay, so that's the one bill I want at the federal level. And we did not have this in 2020. Okay, I'm the one candidate bold enough to say, I think if every election official nationwide followed the law, followed the rules, President Trump would right now be in the Oval Office and the world would be so much better off. But that didn't happen, and we had politicians in office who were too scared to do anything about it. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. Great, you can ban ballot harvesting. Arizona did that. It's true. Mark Brnovich defended that law. I think it would have been really hard to lose that case in the Supreme Court. They have 6 conservative votes. But ballot harvesting being illegal doesn't do a darn thing if you don't enforce it. I don't think we enforced it. In Arizona, 11,600 people voted on what's called a federal-only ballot. They voted for president, 11,600. To get that federal-only ballot, all you had to do was check a box saying, I swear I'm a US citizen. No ID. We let 11,600 people vote for president on the honor system. The difference officially between Biden and Trump in this state, 10,500. Okay, we got to fix this if we want to have a free country.
Jim, you're up.
So my fellow patriots, again, strongly ask that you send someone to the U.S. Senate who gets stuff done. Talk is easy, but we got to save this country and start getting things done. So why can you trust me on election integrity? Well, in 2020, you gave me the honor of being an elector for the state of Arizona for President Trump. In doing that, I took that duty very seriously because I was given that honor because I'd been the largest conservative donor in our state for several times, given to the Andy Biggs group of Conservative Freedom Caucus, given to FreedomWorks, giving to President Trump, giving to those who could stand and save the majority in Arizona House and Senate. No one else on this stage has given $1 to a conservative race ever. Myself and my company, millions to help, because when you can, you should help. In the course of being an elector, when we saw what was going on before the boxes were put away, all the people that came out from the Trump group and other organizations to say, look at this, we saw the fraud. And so your electors then sued Pence and Ducey to stop and say, whoa, whoa, whoa. That takes guts to stand up and do that, guys. That's not talk, that's action. Let's go and get stuff done. When that didn't work, and we went ahead and put the guy in the White House, then we said, hey, in Arizona, our legislators stood up and said, we need to do an audit. But they didn't appropriate enough money. They came and said, Jim, you've been a big giver to the party and conservatism in the state. Can you help? Yes, of course, we have to find out what went on. So again, the only person up here, guys, who took action to get that done was myself and a lot of great members of my beautiful company we created here in Arizona, because we needed to know what was inside out of it. What are we doing today? We're passing laws in our legislature. Not as fast as we'd like, but what am I doing today? Is the legislatures that are America First, either running or getting in for re-election, I'm max donating to them because they need help to get into the legislature. Lastly, guys, the largest private voter registration project in the history of Arizona. I was fortunate enough to be able to found it and fund it last year, and we have now registered 20,000 new Republicans. Okay?
Thank you, Jim. All right, Mark.
You know, I always say as a prosecutor, everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but not their own facts. And so let me just begin by saying that during this last election cycle, You know, we heard about election integrity bills and measures the legislature was passed, but it was me and it was our office that literally, as Blake alluded to, went to the U.S. Supreme Court to defend the ability of states to enact election integrity measures. And it was a result of Brnovich v. DNC, the most important election case in a generation. That is why states have been able to enact election integrity measures. Everything from new laws dealing with restrictions on ballot harvesting, out-of-precinct voting. And so, once again, when the DNC and their lawyers, you may be familiar with this firm called Perkins Coie, when we were fighting them, not one single person on this stage was there with us and joined us. And in fact, when Adrian Fontes, when Adrian Fontes, the recorder, tried to mail out ballots to everyone that wanted them or not, it was us in our office that went in on a Friday afternoon to stop him from doing so. When the Democratic Party and liberal groups tried to extend the ballot curing period, we went to federal court to stop it. When they tried to change the signature requirements, we went to the state Supreme Court to stop it. And look, I know people are upset, but you know what? We're conservatives. The Constitution matters. We have more than 20 criminal cases right now related to the 2020 election. We have two convictions out of Yuma County. But I think everyone up here knows, look, when you're a prosecutor, I'm respecting you, please respect me and let me finish my answer. If the truth hurts, then just shut the hell up, all right? Let me just talk. Because I'll tell you what, we're going to have someone that can stand up to Mark Kelly and the Democratic machine and not just regurgitate talking points. And the reality is, as a prosecutor, you are limited what you can say, and everyone up here knows that, especially the California lawyer, that you cannot say something while a case is pending and ongoing. And I know this, not only me, but lawyers in our office have gotten bar complaints from the universities, from the Secretary of State, and they've been dismissed. But that's what the left does, is they weaponize this process. So we have to be careful. How we do stuff as conservatives matter.
Thank you. All right. We are now going to head into our lightning round. You will have 30 seconds. Can we set 30 seconds on the clock? Okay. You'll have 30 seconds each. You could sit. That works. 30 seconds each to answer, that's why it's the lightning round, to answer these questions. And we will start with Justin. Ready? Here we go. If Republicans take back the Senate, should Mitch McConnell be majority leader?
I think we all agree on that, right? Absolutely not. You know, I'm going to support a proven conservative. I'm going to support someone like Mike Lee, someone like Ted Cruz, someone like Rand Paul. You know, the Republicans have let us down countless times, and that's what I'm going to Washington, D.C. to do, is to be the Arizona version of Mike Lee, the Arizona version of Ted Cruz, the Arizona version of Rand Paul. I'm going to be your conservative fighter. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mick.
Yeah, I had said on the record that I was going to give Mitch the benefit of the doubt because we need the money so bad for the border, but after his vote yesterday on red flag laws, which is the greatest abridgment of your 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights, he cannot have my vote.
All right. Thank you. Blake.
I think we need new leadership. I'm going to try to convince Senator Josh Hawley to run. I will vote for him. I will convince Senator Tom Cotton to run. I will vote for him. I find it, and I'll tell Mitch this to his face, okay? He's not bad at everything. He's good at judges. He's good at blocking Democrats. You know what he's not good at? Legislating. Okay? We inaugurated President Trump January 2017. Boom, time to go. We elected him as a change agent. We didn't get much done initially because of Paul Ryan in the House, Mitch McConnell in the Senate. I'm tired of that. It's time to play offense.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you.
Jim.
My fellow patriots, it's time for straight talk. I'm not going to sit up here and just talk. We're going to go do things. I will vote for the most conservative new majority leader in the Senate. We will win this seat in Arizona, which is critical to turn the Senate to have that opportunity. No one has ever run against Mitch McConnell. So if I stand up here and say, no, hell no, I'm going to give you honest answers because I sure as hell not going to vote for Schumer if that's the only choice I got. But I will vote for the most conservative person that runs for majority leader.
Thank you, Jim. Mark.
Look, we all know Washington, D.C. is broken, and so we cannot have the status quo. And as Jim said, it's a matter of getting the most conservative person we can as majority leader. One of the things that Washington, D.C. doesn't talk about, or people from the legislature, is right now in D.C., more than 90% of the votes are by unanimous consent. So conservative voices are being shut out. We hear about these conservatives, and they're not being heard because there's been too many backroom broker deals between the establishment, whether they're Democrat or Republican. So it's time for change.
Thank you, Mark. We'll start with you on this next question. With Boeing having a substantial economic footprint in Arizona, would you vote to reauthorize the Export-Import Bank?
No. I mean, I have a record of taking on the crony capitalists in this state, whether it was suing the universities when they tried to give tuition to people that didn't have legal status, to suing them over their sweetheart real estate deals. The reason why so many young folks are turned off to capitalism is because they don't know capitalism. What they've seen is crony capitalism. And so, no, absolutely not to reauthorization.
All right. Jim.
So guys, all of this world Marxism type of alphabeticals of import, export, the WHO organization, the UN, all of that kind of stuff is gone too far. They're out there in Marxism land. We're going to get back to America first in this country, okay? And so, no, we did not. I will not bend a knee to anyone other than my Lord, and I will tell you in D.C., we'll stand up for this country. No more Marxism.
Thank you. Blake, you are up next.
No, I won't. I don't think the government should be picking winners and losers. Okay, I do think there is a federal role to play in trade, though. Like I said, there's no free trade with China. Okay, we can't pick winners and losers, but we have to protect domestic industry. We have to reindustrialize. We have to make things here in America again, but that does not mean we need a bloated trade bureaucracy to manage it. Okay, no picking winners and losers. America first economic policy. That's what President Trump supports. That's what I support. That's why he endorsed me.
Thank you. All right, Mick.
No as well. You can't have free and fair trade with a cheater. China's a cheater. Pretty obvious. We can't have bilateral trade agreements with our partners. And we work each of those individually. And we make sure it's always free and fair and never disenfranchises the American taxpayers. If it does, we don't enter the deal. It's just that simple. We are a sovereign nation. We will not cede our sovereignty to any other entity.
Thank you, Mick. Justin.
I will oppose the Export-Import Bank. We've got to fight against this crony capitalism. And again, talk is cheap. We can all stand up here and we can say what you want to hear, but I'm the only candidate in this room, on this stage, who has actually voted against this crony capitalism. Every legislative session, folks would come down to the legislature. The Chamber of Commerce would be there. The Republican leadership would be saying, we've got to do this for economic growth. And I stood firm against the establishment. I'll do it in Washington, D.C. I've done it here. I'm going to fight against crony capitalism.
All right, Justin, you will start with this one. Should DACA recipients be given a pathway to citizenship, permanent legal status, or a deportation notice?
Thank you so much. A deportation notice. There is no amnesty that we can grant to these folks that have broken our laws. If we do, all we're doing is we're enticing more folks to come here illegally. And do you know what happens? We see an increase of unaccompanied minors. We see infants being dropped over the border wall and abandoned in the desert by the cartels because of these failed policies of the Biden and Obama administration. I will fight against it. I will fight to protect the rule of law, secure our borders. My name's Justin Olson. I would love to get your support.
Thank you, Justin. Mick.
Yeah, I made the comment earlier, you don't ask for more mops, you first stop the leak. Once you stop the leak, you tell them all, you have 180 days to self-report. If you don't self-report in 180 days, you'll be deported. If you've crossed into the country illegally, you'll go to the end of the line. And I am not convinced that the immigration laws are broken since no one is enforcing them.
Thank you, Mick. Blake.
With respect, no, I don't think you go to the end of the line. I think there is no line. If your first interaction with our country is to break its immigration laws, you will never become a U.S. citizen. Ever. No amnesty. Sorry. Now, DACA, right? The so-called dreamers. which, let's not use that language, right? That's a left-wing frame. But little kids who came here who didn't themselves know what was going on. I actually don't believe that Justin would be willing to deport those people. I say deport them if they commit crimes. If they register, they can stay. No citizenship ever.
Thank you, Blake. Jim.
This is not a lightning round question, guys. I'm sorry. This is a very large issue. No amnesty, certainly no amnesty. You can never be a U.S. citizen. You never can vote. You can never get benefits in this country if you came here any way other than legally. But there is a very complicated issue that we have a lot to do more than a one lightning round question here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Mark.
As a first-generation American, I always tell folks, I know why people want to come to this country. It's the greatest country in the world because the rule of law means something. And when the rule of law is systematically undermined, when you have the Biden administration incentivizing and decriminalizing illegal behavior and then rewarding it, you get more of it. And that's why I went to the state Supreme Court and stopped our universities from giving in-state tuition and other benefits to people that aren't here legally, no matter what you call them.
Thank you, Mark. You will be first on this next question. Should the United States continue to supply Ukraine with military, humanitarian, and economic aid?
John Adams famously said that we are friends of liberty everywhere, but protectors only of our own. And it's about time that NATO and our allies did their fair share. That doesn't mean you can't supply Ukraine with defensive weapons, which we should have done proactively. But my God, we don't have listen to what I'm saying. We don't have baby formula. No, we don't have baby formula, rising gas prices. We shouldn't be subsidizing anyone's war or anything else in the world. Just be careful what I said there. Thank you.
Jim.
So there's only one veteran up here who is also a job creator. I say that any freedom country, any freedom-loving country that wants to buy our weaponry, we're going to sell it to you and we're going to make a little profit on it to help pay down our debt. But we're not going to give it away no more. The taxpayer's tired. We're tired. Let's start standing up for America first. Let's start standing up, yes, for freedom-loving people, but the EU is a good nation of money. Ukraine has wheat. There's ways to not have to fund it as we as taxpayers and still do the job for them.
Thank you, Jim. Blake.
One word answer is no. But since I have 28 seconds, no, we don't have that money. First of all, it's not like we had a good year and there's a surplus. And man, who should we send the $40 billion to? Should it go to U.S. military veterans or Ukraine? No, we don't have that money. So they're just inflating away, making this crisis worse. Also, where's the money going? God bless Rand Paul for saying, if we're going to do this horrible $40 billion thing, can we at least find out where it's going? No. The establishment wouldn't want that, right? So we cannot be doing this dumb foreign policy anymore. I say no, we already said too much.
Mick.
Yeah, I understand the stressors of war. I'll never put a single American citizen in harm's way unless I can explain to you why they're going, what they're going for, and what their objectives are. Relative to the Ukraine, I did support the initial delivery of weapon systems, warheads, rounds, and gunpowder, humanitarian aid, and medical aid. I do not support sending them $40 billion of unaccountable money that does nothing as people are pouring into their country.
Thank you, Mick. Justin.
No, I would not have supported the $40 billion budget bill that these folks passed in Washington, D.C. You know what we should be doing is we should be projecting strength at every turn. We should be putting in place sanctions. You know, can you imagine Russia bringing forward this aggression under President Trump? It would never have happened. We need peace through strength. We need to invest in our military. We need to secure our borders. We need to have competence in the Oval Office. If we do that, then we can help the Ukraine. Thank you.
All right, we're going to start with you for this next question, Justin. Should members of Congress be allowed to trade stock while in office?
Absolutely not. I look forward to introducing the bill to say we're going to prevent members of Congress from buying and selling individual stocks so they can stop profiting from insider trading. And we'll name it the Nancy Pelosi bill.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Mick, you're up next.
Absolutely not. We might have to create a carve-out, though, if each of us can have Nancy and Chuck Schumer be our stockbroker. because they are the best stock pickers in the history of the country. I mean, they make Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and all these other guys at Blackstone look like they don't know what they're doing. That is the ultimate insider trading scheme. It has to stop.
All right, thank you, Mick. Blake.
I agree with that completely. One of my favorite, I visit Tucker Carlson on his show about every month, and my favorite one was from December, when I went on and said, naughty Nancy, Tucker, she is at it again, okay? She is better than Warren Buffett. You think she's talking to her husband, Paul? You think she's getting some stock tips? Okay, we need to ban that practice. Serving in Congress is a privilege. It is an honor. You can't be a hedge fund manager if you're also serving in Congress. So I say put assets in a blind trust, okay? And how about some accountability? Or better yet, jail for people who actually abuse the public trust to make stocks and profit.
Jim.
The answer is no, we should not. I have already proactively divested of any individual stocks in my portfolio to ensure that that will not occur as a U.S. Senator. The other thing is, I think, from an accountability standpoint, everyone in the U.S. Congress should start looking at American stocks as well, or American companies, instead of what comes out of big tech or other investments. It should be more pro-American. Live what you go there to represent for the American people.
Thank you, Jim. And Mark.
The answer is absolutely not. We know that people go to Washington, D.C., and whether it's Hunter Biden or even other Republicans, they always seem to be wealthier when they leave than when they got there. And that's the problem in this country. I think we need folks that understand what it's like to be a hardworking middle-class taxpayer in D.C. so they protect the interests of taxpayers and not their wealthy friends.
All right, thank you, Mark. These last two questions can be short and sweet. You can stay in your seat. One-word answer is fine with me. Do you pledge to support whoever the nominee is come November? Mark?
Of course I support myself. Yes, I will be the nominee because we need the right person taking on Mark Kelly, someone that's got a record and someone that can beat him.
Jim?
We must beat Mark Kelly, so the answer is yes. Whatever it takes, Arizona has to stand up and lead this country.
Blake?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely, we must beat Mark Kelly.
All right, this last question is a fun one. We'll start with you, Justin. Finally, are you a Sun Devil, Wildcat, or supporter of another team?
Graduated from ASU, got my MBA in finance from a W.P. Carrier School of Business. Go Devils!
Mick?
I'm a graduate of the Air Force Academy, so I'm a fighting Falcon.
Blake?
Proud Tucsonan, Wildcat. Sorry, Phoenix. Sorry, Phoenix.
Jim?
As a sports lover, the answer is all of the above, but as a college linebacker, I played for Coach Bryant at Alabama 2 years. I do have a little soft spot for Alabama.
And Mark?
As someone who grew up a Sun Devil and was fortunate enough to know Frank Kush, I'm a big Sun Devil. Unfortunately, they don't own me anymore because I've sued them so many times.
All right. Well, these candidates, they definitely brought their A game. We have a really strong list of candidates to choose from. Can we give them all a round of applause? And I would like to call back C.L. Bryant for closing comments. Thank you.
Come stay right here with me. How about that, Arizona? Let's give them all a round of applause. Let's give them all a round of applause. Why don't you gentlemen stand up? Your candidates for Arizona, senatorial candidates. Well, friends, now, as I told you from the beginning, we would come in and we do the straw polls before this debate began. Know that many of you came in with your minds made up. I want you to take a look at the back of that card. The back of that card, one more time that you have, with the barcode on it. And then we want you to vote now as an exit poll so that we can get both the before and after results of your opinions, your vote for your next leader as senator from the great state of Arizona. Friends, we want to thank you. On behalf of our president, Adam Brandon, and the FreedomWorks family, we want to thank you for coming out here tonight. But I have one more question for all of you, and if you answer this question, you'll be answering it for your posterity. You'll be answering it for your American future. And that question is, are there any patriots left in Arizona? Is there anyone here who will stand up for God and country, who will stand up for the Republic, who will stand up for America? Then Americans, stand up, stand up, stand up. God bless you. Good night. God bless America. Thank you for coming out.